I didn't think Odell Beckham Jr. was going to be traded, but I wonder if the Cleveland Browns are reconsidering that with a little bit of drama there where OBJ's dad now involved in this. OBJ Sr. is involved in this. Let's start there with Peter King from Football Morning in America, NBCSports.com. Why didn't you think he was traded, Pete?
Who's got the money for Odell Beckham? I mean, Dan, the biggest problem at the trading deadline this year is that there were a record number of teams within $5 million of the salary cap or less. The Rams really wanted Von Miller, but they told the Broncos, listen, we have no money and we've already redone all the contracts that we can. The only way this gets done is if you take the vast majority of his money. The Rams paid an extra third-round pick for Von Miller because the Broncos were willing to pay $9 million of the $9.7 million that was left. So with Odell, I mean, I'm trying to think of the number now. I wrote it in my column a week ago that if anybody wants him, basically they got to commit whatever $21 million to him over the next 3 years, and including this year. And it's just, I mean, does anybody really want to do that for a guy who A, gets hurt a lot, B, for whatever reason, okay, and no one really knows, but for whatever reason, he's not the receiver he was with the Giants. Is he not getting targeted enough? That's what he would say. I mean, but Dan, his yards per catch is way down from Giants days. It's just he's kind of a mystery player right now. Plus, he's either about to turn 29 or 29. So. I don't know. Teams without money and not knowing what guy you're getting when you trade for Odell Beckham, I think that's the reason why.
Yeah, but it's just strange that he got there and it felt like his mind was still in New York. Like the Giants sent you to the Browns. They wanted to punish you. And he kept like, I'm going to prove you guys wrong. I mean, they're a contender. He could be a media darling. Like, you want out of a situation that you would want into a situation where you got a chance to win a Super Bowl in Cleveland. You could be the star of this team. I'm just curious. When I watch, there are times when I can go a long period of time, I don't hear his name called.
Yeah, I think part of that is that, so he missed, I think, 9 games last year. He's missed a couple of games this year with injury. So Dan, that's the big question. Who is he? And that the other part of this, I think, is, I mean, when you think about Odell Beckham Jr., okay, you think of a real explosive receiver. And, he just hasn't. I mean, he had a couple of plays last year against Dallas. I think one was even a running play, if I'm not mistaken, a reverse. And, he looked like the old explosive Odell. But to me, I mean, he's such a squeaky wheel. And at some point you have to determine, and I'm sure the Browns have buyer's remorse, but at some point you have to determine if that's worth it. And I'm sure a lot of teams around the league, I mean, look, we might sit here, Dan, and say, oh, his dad doing that, that's just a father protecting his son or whatever, being a fan, whatever it is. I mean, stuff like that gets into a locker room.
Yeah.
Do you want to trade for that? I mean, he's been as disruptive as he's been effective. And the other thing is, if you look at his career with the Giants, he was a touchdown machine. I mean, this guy has scored 7 touchdowns in 2.5 years with the Browns. I mean, he hasn't scored a touchdown since midseason last year. So what are you getting, Dan? That's the question.
What's the trade that should have happened but didn't?
The trade that should have happened that didn't is, I think the Broncos, if I were them, I would have traded Kyle Fuller for whatever I can get. You've got enough depth in the secondary right now. You're down on Kyle Fuller. And I know there wasn't as robust a market for him as people thought, but, I mean, he's still just look at all the teams, all the top-tier teams in the NFL that could use a corner right now. I thought that was one that should have happened and didn't.
Give me the strategy behind the Texans not trading Deshaun Watson.
I mean, you got to have two teams that want to make a trade. If the Miami Dolphins really wanted Deshaun Watson, they would have traded for him. Now, I do not know what happened in this alleged conversation between Stephen Ross and Deshaun Watson on Monday night. I'm not positive it happened, but let's just say it did. Basically, if you're Stephen Ross, you've got to get a commitment from either Deshaun Watson's people or his handlers, his agent, his lawyers, whatever, to say, we're going to make this thing go away. We are going to make a settlement on this right now. And for whatever reason, whether that was asked for and didn't happen, if I were the owner, that's what I would have said. We'll trade for you if this goes away, and we'll deal with the firestorm. But Deshaun Watson and his attorney last spring chose to not settle. Whether they could have or not, I don't know. But he is steadfastly proclaimed his innocence. That's America. But you can't ask an acquiring team to acquire a superstar player and you don't know whether he's going to be available not only this year, but on opening day next year. If this goes the way we think it is, Dan, and this doesn't get resolved until sometime in 2022, Deshaun Watson's probably not playing opening day next year.
Yeah.
So who would trade for that?
Yeah, and what are you trading, and when are you going to get him? We've asked the Texans twice, whose decision is this that Deshaun Watson is not playing? Is it the Texans? Is it Deshaun's? Is it the NFL? And we've gotten no response. What if Deshaun goes in and goes, hey, I'd like to play now?
It's a coach's decision, and David Culley would say, I'm sorry, we're playing Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills. So then you have to decide, do you want to be the ultimate squeaky wheel and start screaming to play? I doubt he would do that. My gut feeling is this is just going to continue as it has been the whole year.
Is it tanking?
Is it what?
Tanking.
Is it tanking? I don't think it's tanking in the truest sense of the word. Let me ask you a question, Dan. If you owned a football team and there was some significant evidence that your star had sexual impropriety with any number of women up to the number 22, and you have to ask yourself, do I want this person wearing my uniform? That's a question that for anybody who says, oh my God, he ought to be playing, ask yourself the question, if you would want Deshaun Watson being the quarterback of your team right now, when he has not been found guilty of anything yet. But, are the accusations so reprehensible that you would want him, that you could overlook them and have him play for your team? I wouldn't want to.
Why not suspend him?
You don't need to.
But you're paying him. I think that's where people have a problem.
You are paying him, but if you suspend him, the NFL or the NFLPA is just going to challenge it. And the NFLPA is going to say, this man, it's America. He's innocent until proven guilty. Nothing has been found guilty. The NFLPA would win it. I don't see any alternative. If you're not going to play him, if you don't want to play him, it's just like the Keyshawn Johnson thing with Gruden. The last 6 games of the year, they just told him, hey, stay home. And they paid him for not coming because Gruden hated Keyshawn so much and thought he was disruptive. And, if you suspend him and don't pay him, you're going to have the NFLPA all over you, and the NFLPA would win.
Talking to Peter King, Football Morning in America, columnist, NBCSports.com. You mentioned John Gruden. With John Gruden out, with what happened with Henry Ruggs, they're a competitive team. How do you sort of handicap what the Raiders are going to be able to do the second half of the season here?
Well, here's the thing about the Raiders, all right? I mean, to me, the reason why this hurts them right now, especially, is because they had figured out the sweet spot with Henry Ruggs. And what I mean by that is they had figured out that we're not going to play him every snap because physically he's just not up to it. And so they had gotten great production out of him. I mean, he was the modern day Cliff Branch, and he was going to have a great career. And now that he's gone, now you ask yourself, so what are they going to do? I think for the short term, Zay Jones is probably the guy who will play in his spot Sunday against the Giants. But I would expect if Deshaun Watson clears waivers by I think it is Thursday at 4 p.m., might be Wednesday at 4 p.m. because he wasn't traded in time. I think he's got to clear waivers by Thursday at 4 p.m. And if he does, I would expect the Raiders to be very interested. But the Raiders are hamstrung like so many teams right now. They're $2.6 million under the cap. So if they were to sign Deshaun Jackson, they would have to get him for bargain basement. And so, and you don't know right now. I don't know how much Mike Mayock thinks of Deshaun Jackson, but it's a very, very logical substitute, especially for a team that's better than we all thought they'd be at midseason.
What did you make of the Rams' strategy in trading for Von Miller?
It fits everything that they do. They figure that we'd rather have a proven veteran than an unproven rookie, even if it's like for 2 picks. You know, you look at what happened with Jalen Ramsey, and I forget what number picks they were that they traded, but who wouldn't take the best corner in football for 2 low ones, or whatever the deal was. And I think it's the same thing with Von Miller. They will trade essentially, let's make it up, Dan, the 60th and 95th picks, about somewhere around there, for Von Miller. They will play him sparingly, I think. They're not going to play him every snap now because this is a trade for January and February, Dan. It's not a trade for November. And so they want him to be fresh when they're trying to beat Tom Brady in the divisional game in January.
Have you touched base with John Gruden?
No, I've not spoken to him.
What if the Jets have found their quarterback and that quarterback is not Zach Wilson?
I think this is a very interesting game on Thursday night because if Mike White plays great and if somehow, some way they win, I don't think there's any way Saleh's putting Zach Wilson back in the game a week from Sunday when he's healthy. That's my guess. How could you? If the guy plays 2 great games in a row and your franchise future guy had been struggling the way Zach Wilson was. But that's something that I think it's easy to say what if, but we just don't know because the games haven't been played. I wouldn't expect that Mike White would play great again on the road, loud environment, Colts playing for their season. But, you never know. I do think that Robert Saleh is a lot more interested in winning than he would be interested in putting salve on the hurt feelings of Zach Wilson, however.
I know you're a big baseball fan. I mentioned when the Braves were celebrating last night, one of the things I thought about is, do we move on now from the Astros of 2017? You've only got a couple of players left. Altuve is still there.
And you're going to lose. They'll lose the shortstop
Correa.
now.
Yeah.
They'll lose Correa now. So there will only be 2 big guys left. And, it was funny, Dan. The Fenway crowd was killing the Astros during the playoffs. And this thought occurred to me. The best players on the Astros in that playoff series were all guys who were either not even in their organization. They might have been in college or high school. In 2017, where was Yordan Alvarez? Where was Framber Valdez? These guys, they walk in and they said, it reminds me of what George Young used to say when there'd be some controversy involving the Giants that he had nothing to do with. And he would say, what did I do? I'm just sitting around here picking my nose and there's a crisis. And it's just, those guys have to be thinking, man, you're picking on the wrong guys.
Yeah, I just don't know. I think Dodger fans are going to keep that and never let go. But I don't know if other fan bases really care since the Astros lost to the Braves.
You know what? The Yankee crowd will be the exact same way.
Yeah.
You know, the Astros are kind of fortunate that they don't play the Dodgers. How often do they play them? Once every 3 years? I don't even know how the interleague schedules work. But obviously, they go to the Bronx once a year, and that crowd will never let them forget it. And that'll happen long after, Jose Altuve will be in a retirement home, and the Yankees will still be killing the Astros every time that an Astro walks into Yankee Stadium.
One other thing I forgot football-wise, I thought maybe the Saints would reach out to the Broncos since they're having a fire sale and bring back Teddy Bridgewater. Now there's a report maybe that Phillip Rivers would be interested in playing for the Saints. What do you think Sean Payton does the rest of the season at that position?
I talked to him at length on Sunday night, Dan. I didn't get the impression that he thought the answer at quarterback was outside the room. I'm not saying that it can happen, but the other part of it is the Saints don't have two nickels. The Saints are one of two teams in the NFL right now who are under $1 million for the salary cap. You think Phillip Rivers is going to play for dimes? I mean, he played for $25 million last year.
Yeah.
And I doubt sincerely that they would move heaven and earth for a guy who might be their quarterback after he practices for a while, for what, 7 weeks and maybe the playoffs. I'm telling you, Sean Payton thinks that he can manage a game with Trevor Siemian, and he thinks he can use Taysom Hill. He might have Taysom Hill start. I don't know. But I think he's okay with those guys. Now, if he gets one of them hurt, then he has to go to Ian Book, and then he might be in a little bit of trouble, even though he does love Ian Book. But having said all that, my gut feeling is that they're not going to look outside for quarterback.
Great to talk to you again, Pete. Thank you. Have a great week.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
That's Peter King, Football Morning in America columnist, NBC Sports.